Si vous avez l'impression de parler un anglais très scolaire, très basique et que vous aimeriez améliorer votre vocabulaire et avoir plus de mots et d'expressions à utiliser en anglais pour parler de façon plus fluide, spontanée et plus naturelle, si c'est votre cas, j'ai exactement ce qu'il vous faut aujourd'hui. Je vous ai préparé un épisode de podcast sur le vocabulaire des émotions en anglais. Mais avant de démarrer ce podcast, je vous propose d'aller télécharger dans la description ou flasher le QR code à l'écran pour télécharger gratuitement un programme sur un mois pour vous remettre à l'anglais de façon claire, simple et structurée. Sur ce, je vous laisse avec vos hôtes britanniques Sarah and James. Enjoy listening, enjoy watching.
Hello and welcome to the Leia English podcast, the podcast that helps you master the nuances of the English language. I'm Sarah.
And I'm James. Today we're diving into something we all experience every single day but might struggle to express accurately in English, our emotions.
That's right, James. How many times have you heard someone say, I'm fine, when they're clearly anything but fine? Or perhaps you've wanted to express that you're not just happy, but absolutely over the moon about something.
Exactly. And that's what we're exploring today. The rich spectrum of emotional vocabulary in English, from the subtle differences between feeling a bit down and being utterly devastated.
Everyone knows that emotions shape every moment of our lives, yet studies show the average person only uses about 12 different emotional words per day, when the English language offers over 400 distinct terms for our feelings. Now, before we begin, let me ask you this, James. If I said I was feeling under the weather, what would you think?
Well, I'd probably assume you're feeling unwell, perhaps a bit poorly. But interestingly, Sarah, under the weather doesn't necessarily mean you're physically ill, does it?
Precisely. It's one of those lovely English expressions that can mean you're feeling a bit off, whether that's physically, emotionally, or just generally not quite yourself. It's much more gentle than saying, I feel terrible.
And that brings us to our first major point, intensity. English gives us this wonderful ability to be incredibly precise about how we're feeling. Let's start with sadness, shall we?
Good idea. So, James, if you're feeling just a little bit sad, you might say,
I'm feeling a bit down, or I'm a bit low today. These are quite mild expressions, aren't they? They suggest a temporary, manageable sadness.
Exactly. Then we can move up the scale to upset or disappointed. These carry more weight, don't they?
They do indeed. And if we're talking about something more serious, we might say devastated or heartbroken. Now, Sarah, there's an important cultural point here. We Brits tend to understate our emotions, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. A British person saying they're quite upset might actually be feeling what others would call devastated. It's our famous reserve showing through in our language.
Too right. Now let's flip this around and talk about happiness. We've got such a delightful range here, haven't we?
We certainly do. Starting gentle, you might feel content or pleased. These suggest a quiet, peaceful happiness.
Then there's happy and glad, good, solid, positive emotions. But Sarah, what's the difference between glad and happy?
That's a brilliant question, James. Glad often relates to relief or gratitude about a specific situation. I'm glad you're here, while happy is more of a general emotional state. You could be happy without any particular reason.
Fascinating. And then we can ramp it up to thrilled, delighted, or my personal favourite, chuffed to bits.
Oh, chuffed to bits and wonderfully British, isn't it? That's when you're so pleased you could burst with pride. And at the very top of our happiness scale, we've got ecstatic, over the moon, or on cloud 9.
Over the moon. Another great British expression. Now, let's talk about anger, because this is where English really shows its sophistication.
Indeed. At the mild end, we might feel annoyed or irritated. These are about minor frustrations, aren't they?
Right. Then we move to upset, which interestingly can cover both sadness and anger depending on context, and frustrated, which suggests anger mixed with helplessness.
Then there's angry and furious. Now, James, livid is interesting. It suggests anger that's so intense you've gone white with rage.
Yes, and seeing red, or being incandescent with rage, These paint quite vivid pictures, don't they?
They certainly do. Now, let's discuss tiredness, because I think this is where many English learners get stuck using just one word.
Oh yes, the poor overworked word, tired. Sarah, how would you describe different levels of tiredness?
Well, you might be a bit weary after a long day or fatigued after sustained effort, but if you're knackered or shattered, now we're talking proper British tiredness.
Knackered is wonderfully expressive, isn't it? And then there's exhausted, for when you're completely drained or dead on your feet, when you can barely function.
Exactly. And here's something interesting. We can intensify these emotions with adverbs. Instead of just tired, you could be absolutely knackered or completely shattered.
That's a crucial point, Sarah. Words like absolutely, completely, utterly, thoroughly, they all add intensity. But we also have diminishing words, a bit, quite, rather, somewhat.
Yes, and the choice between these can completely change your message. I'm quite angry suggests controlled displeasure, while I'm absolutely livid suggests you're ready to explode.
Now let's touch on some emotions that don't fit neatly into our happy, sad, angry categories. What about feeling overwhelmed, Sarah?
Ah, overwhelmed is such a useful word, isn't it? It suggests being completely swamped by emotions or circumstances. Similar words might be swamped, snowed under, or out of your depth.
And what about positive overwhelm? You might be blown away by something wonderful or bowled over by someone's kindness.
Exactly. And then there are the more complex emotions, feeling conflicted when you're torn between different feelings, or ambivalent when you have mixed emotions about something.
Bittersweet is lovely too, when something is simultaneously happy and sad, like watching your children leave home.
That's beautiful, James. Now let's talk about some particularly British ways of expressing emotions. We do love our understatement, don't we?
We certainly do. A British person might say, I'm not best pleased when they're actually furious, or I'm a bit concerned when they're genuinely worried sick.
And we have some wonderfully colourful expressions too. Instead of just saying you're surprised, you might be gobsmacked or flummoxed.
Gobsmacked, I love that one. It literally means so surprised your mouth falls open. And chuffed for pleased, gutted for devastated, miffed for slightly annoyed.
These informal expressions add such character to our speech, don't they? But James, there's an important point about register here, knowing when to use formal versus informal language.
Absolutely crucial, Sarah. In a job interview, you wouldn't say, I was chuffed to bits about the promotion. You'd say, I was delighted, or I was very pleased.
Exactly. Context is everything. Now let's talk about some physical expressions of emotion, those times when emotions affect us physically.
Good point. You might have butterflies in your stomach when nervous, or feel weak at the knees when scared or in love.
Or your heart might sink when disappointed, or skip a beat when excited or shocked. These metaphorical expressions make our language so much more vivid.
And speaking of metaphors, English is full of them for emotions. You might be walking on air when happy, or feeling down in the dumps when sad.
On top of the world versus at rock bottom, these spatial metaphors are fascinating, aren't they? Up equals good, down equals bad.
They are indeed. Now, Sarah, for our listeners who want to sound more natural, what would you say about emotional collocations?
Excellent question. We often pair certain verbs with emotions. You feel happy, but you might get angry or become frustrated. You don't just have excitement. You're filled with excitement.
And we harbour resentment, nurse a grudge, or bottle up emotions. These verb choices add nuance to our expression.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about gradable versus non-gradable adjectives. You can be very happy or extremely tired, but you can't really be very ecstatic. Ecstatic is already at the extreme end.
That's a sophisticated point, Sarah. You might intensify ecstatic with absolutely, but not very. These little rules make all the difference in sounding natural.
Now, before we wrap up, let's talk about emotional intelligence in language. Sometimes the most powerful expressions are the most specific ones.
Exactly. Instead of saying, I feel bad, you might say, I feel guilty, or I feel embarrassed, or I feel disappointed in myself. The precision shows emotional awareness.
And it helps others understand and connect with you better. If you say, I'm feeling overwhelmed by work, that's much more helpful than just I'm stressed.
Absolutely. And remember, listeners, emotions often come in combinations. You might feel excited but nervous about a new job, or happy but exhausted after a big event.
That's such an important point, James. Real emotions are complex, and English gives us the tools to express that complexity.
Now, as we're coming to the end of today's programme, let's leave our listeners with some practical advice. Sarah, how can they build their emotional vocabulary?
I'd suggest keeping an emotion diary for a week. Each day, try to use 3 different words to describe how you're feeling, rather than just good, bad, or okay.
Brilliant idea. And pay attention to how characters express emotions in British films and TV programmes. You'll hear authentic usage in context.
And don't be afraid to ask British friends about emotional expressions. We love explaining our quirky phrases.
We certainly do. Well, that brings us to the end of today's programme. I hope you're feeling enlightened rather than just informed.
And I hope you're absolutely chuffed with what you've learned, not just pleased. Remember, the richness of emotional expression in English reflects the richness of human experience itself.
Beautifully put, Sarah. Until next time, this has been the Leia English Podcast. I'm James.
And I'm Sarah. Keep exploring the wonderful world of English, and remember, there's always the perfect word for exactly how you're feeling.
Merci d'avoir écouté cet épisode de podcast, j'espère qu'il vous a plu. Si vous voulez plus d'épisodes de podcast sur ma chaîne YouTube, n'hésitez pas à me le dire en commentaire, mettez un like et n'hésitez pas à partager cet épisode avec d'autres personnes qui apprennent l'anglais comme vous. Souvenez-vous que vous pouvez télécharger un programme gratuit pour vous remettre à l'anglais sur un mois de façon claire, simple et structurée. Vous pouvez aller regarder le lien dans la description ou flasher le QR code à l'écran. Si vous voulez rester sur YouTube, je vous conseille d'aller regarder ensuite cette vidéo qui vous aidera grandement à améliorer votre anglais de façon rapide et efficace. Sur ce, thanks a lot for watching and see you next time.